Good evening. This is the first reverse portfolio walk that we are doing. And it's the first photo dialogue that DFA German Photographic Academy is doing. It's a premiere because I think it might also be the first event ever that the German Photographic Academy is doing in English. Last year, we set up our new online platform in bilingual. And so while we were planning this online special, we wanted to have one or two formats also in English. And ironically, two Germans are doing it now, Elena and myself. But as we have both been living in English-speaking countries, we'll just pull it off. So we start with a little introduction. Elena participated in the online portfolio walk that we had during our first lockdown in Germany, and her work Plexus was selected. And it was one of my favorite works. When we came up with the idea of turning a portfolio review upside down, I was very happy that Elena asked me to participate in this. So how is it working? Normally, a portfolio review with the German Photographic Academy is that the talents are sitting on tables, they present their work, and the members of DFA are walking past and stop if they find something interesting and talk about the work. What we wanted to do is to turn it upside down to say, okay, now the talents are having a look at the work of the members, which is Elena doing soon. Then I will do the same in reverse. And then we can talk about whatever comes out of this format. Elena and myself, we have never met. And we had a little talk while we were discussing to do this last week. But I think today we will go into any direction that comes out of this format. So it's going to be quick. It's like 5 minutes Elena, 5 minutes myself. Then we talk and we invite all of you to participate. So yeah, Elena, if you're ready to start, please go for it.
I will share my screen. Okay, can you all see it?
Yes, it works.
Great. Okay, so I went back to my studies of art history and tried to use comparative vision to find a way to express all my associations and what I see in the work. So this photograph stood out to me as I am a great fan of symbolist painting, and I initially associated Arnold Böcklin's Isle of the Dead with it. It almost seemed to me as if in this image the viewer is standing right at the entrance of the Isle of the Dead, looking out from beneath the trees, and is looking at the arriving boat where there is Charon ferrying the deceased souls across the Styx for coin. And I think, I also read about your work. You're also working a lot with the unconscious and the unknown. And the three works that I'm gonna talk about a bit now from your portfolio are all works which are somehow, which I would locate on the threshold, and which I interestingly associate with death and life in a way. So this was my first initial association with this. So the viewer, as a viewer, you're actually, it's quite interesting because you're standing in the darkness and you're looking into the light and into something else that is, arriving. So it's kind of an inverted position for you as a viewer. For me, it was quite interesting because I associated this image of the ferryman before I even recognized it as probably a ghost train ride. I think that's what it is, but I'm not entirely sure. yeah, and the fog and the light gives it something very otherworldly for me. What I was also thinking about, this is a similar depiction from Gustave Doré from Dante's Inferno. And I think also in your work there is a lot of yeah, symbolism and yeah, depicting elements from reality without actually showing these elements. They become something else within the image. The second image that I chose is this one from the other side. And again, I associated something very painterly with it. What I associated with it in the first initial moment was a séance. And then it also made me think about Francis Bacon's study after Velázquez's portrait of Pope Innocent. And again, it is this confrontation with the unknown. I mean, I think a séance is the most direct way of confronting the unknown and of kind of making sense of life, of a purpose, or of what there is after life. And yeah, kind of a looking for meaning. And what I also, this is one of the most popular paintings of Bacon probably, and also one of my favorite ones. What comes to mind is also the quote, "God is dead," that is so famous, and the question of, yeah, again, of a sense and a purpose probably, which also struck me in this image, as I also see kind of a memento mori reference with a skull that is lifting from the sitting body, and again, very strong colors as well. It seems to be very violent in a way, this confrontation, which I also found very evocative. And then as a third image, I chose this one also from the other side, as it kind of related for me to this topic and theme of a confrontation of the unknown, of life, of death, and the whole circle. And I find it very interesting how, again, I associated this much more with painting than with actual photography. And my first thought was the death of Marat. And I think there are, like, the pose in which the figure is very, one that is referenced very often in art history. But the new element that there is in this image, and what I also liked a lot, is that this lifeless body, or the sleeping body, is tearing on this colorful fabric, almost like either closing the veil or opening the veil. So this myriads of color flow into this red body, and then go into darkness, into black and white. Yeah, which I also liked a lot. Yeah, I think color is a very strong element in the photographs, used also in a very symbolic way and contributing to the whole mood of the image. And I also think that the use of color is also something that connects very much to the unconscious and the subconscious. I think it is a very impulsive way of expression. Yeah, I think that's for now all I want to say about the images. Yeah.
Okay, I guess it's my turn now. Mm-hmm. Wow, thank you for this. Yeah, I think it's obvious that you have a background also in art history, the way you relate it to existing works. I'm going to reply to this later. So let's go to my screen. And I had a look at your webpage. So I think I start with Plexus, the work you handed into the online portfolio walk, and then I will go to Unternächte, Origin of Touch, and talk about your writing, which I found very interesting. So what I saw here was like the house as a symbol for a threshold between inside and outside. And when we click through all of this here, what I realized after some time is that there are no living humans. It's just like the house and objects. It's an absence of people. And the only representation I see of people is photographs, pictures of men. And then it's often like uniforms. And there are a lot of animals, and most of them seem to be dead, many of them possibly replacing dead humans. There was just like one animal that was obviously alive. And that was the very first picture with the snake. So let's go one more. I found that mix very interesting because you talk about family trauma, and there are many elements that I found in your work before that are reoccurring, also possibly related to your roots in Bavaria and trees. Trees are something that come back over and over again in your work. I found this a very fascinating way of working with the symbol of trees. If we go to Unternächte, which is about the period of time at the end of the year that has a little bit of Halloween, a little bit of winter, a little bit of mix between something that is old and something and dead and something new to come. There are many images that I'm envious of, like this, for example. Yeah, again, a tree. The way you work with black and white is something which is very strong. Here I saw for the first time like living beings, like hands of someone, the cat. But again, trees, mix of black and white in color, ghost-like figures. Going to the origin of touch, you have the trees again. And a very interesting way of working with color and working with the night. So possibly we can talk about the night later, because it seems that it's something that goes through your work and my work. And what I found fascinating was this writing of yours. I think it was a master's in London, where you came up with photography as an extension of the inner space. And also in the writing of your work, you relate to a female perspective. And for you, photography and creation is feminine. You say that every artist is always a mother giving birth. And what I found very interesting is that you said, like a tunnel, the inner experience of the artist stretches through the camera into the space of the photograph. So going back to this work, God must be a mother. Here we are, this is like the tunnel that is stretching to God knows where, and then the light comes in. And I have a similar way of working with light. For me, light is one of my main themes, and often the pictures are constructed starting with the light. And going back to your writing, I have some more quotes that I can possibly read. So I stop the streaming here. And you're relating often to paradox situations. You You say, and when image is produced, it's being born and then killed simultaneously because somehow stops. You are quoting Julia Kristeva saying the camera kills in the name of life. And you say a piece of the artist has died and is given a body of its own. Only when the images is seen by a viewer, it's brought to a new life and starts breathing again. On many different levels, I knew that it would be easy to talk to you because for you, the photograph is an extension of the person, and the way you work, the way you create images is very close to what I do. And you say, when you photograph, you're in a dreamlike state, and there is no distinction between your interior, the outside, and your camera is kind of merging it. So right now we have many different options, possibilities, subjects to continue this conversation. Maybe going back to what's one thing you said in presenting my work is the link to painting. Yeah, and you're spot on here. Yeah, before I started with photography, I had a big love for painting. And my influences are in painting. It's not in photography. I started as somebody who was drawing. I wanted to make paintings. When I came to the art school, I was somehow lost, and I got picked up by the professor of photography who just liked what I did. And from there, it continued from black and white to color, and color is very symbolic. And also your link to Belgium symbolist is something that exists because they have similar subjects. One last thing, when you said about the feminine inner space and the feminine perspective. When I started with night photography, I had no idea what I was doing. I was just doing it, and I did like it. And then I visited a botanical garden with a Chinese garden, and they said, okay, this is yin and this is yang, and these are the elements. I knew all about this philosophy. It was part of my studies. But the list of yin elements that struck me, it was the moon, the night, the water, the female, and so it went. And I thought, why is my photography all about yin? And what is yin anyhow? So I tried to find a Western counterpart, and I ended up with Carl Gustav Jung, who said yin is the subconscious part and yang is the conscious part. And I think you have been referring to this as well, and maybe you can pick up from here.
I think that is also why what struck me so much in your work, because in every single photo you create a space, and I know you're dealing a lot with the unconscious, so it seems like you're like similar to what I describe in my thesis, and I think there are many artists who work like this, especially painters of symbolism. I found working like this. You really try to to make a connection with the unconscious through images, and to use the photograph as a gate in which the viewer can then enter to simultaneously find this connection. And I think this is what I find so interesting about the medium, about photography. And I've said this already in the talk we had before, that the camera is capable of like taking a piece of the immediate reality and a piece of the inner reality, and somehow it builds a bridge into the image. And this is also something that I observe very strongly in your photograph, and this spatial encounter. And it's also very interesting what you just said about yin and yang, as I think this is something that is not directly related to any biological gender. And when I speak of a maternal perspective, it is this, this feminine connotation, but which is actually not tied to biology in artistic creation, I think. And I also found this very much in your work, also with this light and darkness, which both have to exist next to each other in order to create this experiential space.
Yeah. Yeah, maybe we open up the conversation here. If anyone would like to ask a question to the two of us or contribute. If not, we just continue.
Yeah, maybe I could. Yeah, Boris, you said something like, I don't see living people in her work. Actually, in the pictures she picked from your work, I didn't see people who looked very much alive either. So I wonder, is that because you take these pictures all the time, or did she chose those because that's the way she works?
I don't know. Like, I know that I have a fascination for shadows and silhouettes, because for me, it's also a placeholder. It could be anybody, yeah, any person. And I also often make fun about these shadows, saying basically I'm photographing Plato's cave. Yeah, everything we see is shadows, and can we go beyond this in a philosophical sense? I found it fascinating what image you chose, Elena, because if you go back to the image that I did with Tanvir from the other side, the portrait image with the colors. Maybe can you go back and show it again?
Yes.
Yeah, we can open this picture. Okay. This is from a collaborative work I do with an artist in Bangladesh, and we don't take any new images. We work from the archive. We destroy the picture in analog ways and put them together to new creations. And because I've been photographing for many years, I have an archive of 20 years, and I upload it on Google Drive, and Tanvir just downloads whatever he wants to use and combines images and sends it back, and I work on them. Depth is somehow persistent in your work. It goes through what you do. It's always a circle of dying, being born, dying, being born. And that image for me is very personal, because the face that you see was my dead father. It was the last picture I took of him. And Tanvir just decided to use that and continue with this. Yeah. And for the work, it's not important, but we go into timeless existential subjects. And often if people ask, what is it all about? I can't give them a narrative like you did with Plexus. I think that makes it easy for people to enter, because you have family story, you have it somehow located in German culture and an environment. It looks German. But with this collaboration with Tanvir, we are placed nowhere. We are we have no time frame, we have no cultural frame, and often people get lost. So what would be interesting here to discuss, because with DFR, we have a mix of photographers that work with reality, travel outside, travel inside, and often are making fun about this work with Tanvir, saying, if we would use a different narrative, like we've been in a mental asylum, working with people that took too many drugs, and then creating with them those images, suddenly the audience would be wider and the interest would be bigger. But at the same time, it would narrow down the picture, because it would be very easy to put it in a box. But I want the viewer to react to it on an emotional level. It's not what does the artist want to tell me. It's more, what reaction do you get from viewing the image? What is touched inside of yourself? How is the reaction to your work? What did you expect in the past?
Yeah, I also find this really interesting in this work. And for me, it's a very positive thing because by not setting this frame as you described it, the work becomes very open and can trigger, it's not restricted to one certain association or meaning, but it can speak to several layers of emotion within the viewer. And yeah, for example, I think I work in a much more similar way in The Origin of Touch, for example, which I feel is also kind of very vague and fluent and describes something that I'm actually not quite capable of grasping. I cannot set a frame, and I do not have such specific research as in Taxus, but it is much more associative, and I cannot explain it. What fascinates me very much about your work and about how you talk about your work is that you see this as a strength and not a weakness, while I sometimes struggle to really explain what I actually want to say with it.
Well, maybe this is an option to open up the conversation to more of us. Can you switch off the shared screen again, please? What about all of you in the talk? Do you feel that it's important to have this narrative to be able to show the work? How is the reaction to work that doesn't have a context? And as a result, when I was applying for DFA for the first time, I had a feeling people are talking too much about their work. What I decided to do is I said, I just show the pictures and no context, and then we talk about the pictures. And then I got a very angry Peter Bialobrzeski that was lost, and said, what's all this about? He just needed something to hold on to. And I thought, no, you don't. It's not about something. It's not like in photography. You have the aboutness. The work needs to be about something, and then you can put it in a box and it's done. And if you don't give the aboutness, you're an outsider. But I still think it's a strength. The problem is that in the world of museums, we are trained to the aboutness. You first go to the wall and you look at the title and description, what is it about? And then you try to find it in the picture. So the strength of the picture is lost. It's narrowed.
Yeah, I think also that in photography or images are seen in our culture most as illustration of text. Really, so you have the text, you have really the idea, you have the theme, and everybody is asking first, and what is the theme before they are looking at the images. And I think for sure it's for me most important first to see and not really to give meanings, really. So, and yeah, but I think that's really a problem in our culture, that most people also not talking about images. They're talking also in DFA really meetings when there are critics about the work. Is really very seldom that you are really talking about the images. I think in our culture, there is not much the culture about talking about images in our contemporary world. Also, that's really true. But I see really differences also in both of your works. Also, I think also by Elena's work, especially the black and white work, for sure there is also a lot of context, really. So I think you working also very conceptual in a way. Also, it's not really, it doesn't look really like a totally intuitive working, really. So, or it's, I think, or it's a brilliant mix of both. Also, so there I see, but I see also for sure really very concrete. Also, you are arranging the object. Also, you are not finding it; you are arranging it. Or is it right? How is your working process really?
It's really part arranging and part finding things. So it's very mixed up actually.
Yeah.
And what I always say is sometimes some images emerge from dreams or random visions I have in the day, and then I have the need to stage them. But I'm not really good at planning. I'm much better at observing my environment and adapting to it. So most of the images then turn out entirely different than initially. And I think it's more a process of experimentation and play, both in staging and in taking images when I come across something.
Yeah, that's brilliant working. I think that's why I think it's a very strong work, because of the mix really of both. So I think also that especially the mixture of both the intuition and conception, I think that's really makes really a work strong. So if it's only concept, that's also, I think, often very dead, the work. So I think especially this kind of intuitive really finding things, it also makes it in a way vivid. Also, if there are no people really depicted.
Thank you.
So if anyone else likes to ask something, you have to unmute your microphone, which is on the bottom left of your screen.
Or you can also write if you prefer.
Boris, when you kind of complain that people ask what the work is really about, you tiptoed around not mentioning concept, because I think that's the central thing that's looked for in art photography. So you've got to be able to explain your concept, not so much what the picture is about, but why you took it. Isn't that more of a problem, that you kind of have to justify why you decided to take this picture?
I think it depends on the person you are talking to. Yeah, I had many portfolio reviews in the past 10 years, and there were some that I just dropped out because I realized you cannot translate your work. There was like reviewers that said, "What's the story?" And I said, "There is no story. This is why I call the work poems." To show it's a different way of perceiving images. And Roger Bellon said that you can only see in a work what you bring yourself to it. Yeah. So if I totally understand Elena's work, because I think in the background, in the love for art history, we are with many similarities. Yeah. I can understand the work that we saw before with Josh on a conceptual level. Yeah. But it doesn't touch me.
Yeah, I think it's often really also at the most of the schools, it's a problem that you first have to say the concept. So first you have to say exactly what you want to do. So especially the theme, but also how to want. But I think in the beginning of a work, you cannot say it. You will, I think, Ellen, you will also say this. You cannot explain in the beginning of a work what you are doing, because I think you learn from your own images. As I think it's a process. As I often speak then of open concepts. For sure, it's a concept. It's not, oh, I'm doing just nice images. For sure, it's at the end, it's a concept. But how you come to the concept of your work, also it's very much understanding your images, and your images are hopefully more than the illustration of the concepts. Because if you read the concept, especially of the academies, it's always the same words. It's really not really often any personal word in it. Also the most of it, it's really a very kind of reproduction of the same really concept text, really. So, and if this is all in the work, I think it would be not enough, and it would not be a lot of context, really. So
maybe we can ask Elena about her experience, because you finished studies last year.
Okay.
Yeah. How was it in the UK?
UK.
Or in relation to this image text relationship?
Yeah, concept. If there is first the concept and then the images, or first the images and then the concept.
Definitely first the images and then the concept.
Yeah.
I think,
wow.
I mean,
that's different in German academies.
I mean, I don't know how it is with other photographers and artists, but when I make work, it is really a kind of emotional urgency. that I cannot immediately pinpoint from the beginning on. So I mostly start working on something without being completely able to explain what I am doing and why I'm doing it. And then I try to dig deeper, not only within the images, but also within reading.
Absolutely, yeah, sure.
And I think, yeah, every body of work, and I think this is probably for very many artists, I think also for you, Boris, it is a process of learning about yourself, but at the same time trying to make this knowledge that you gain on your journey accessible to other people as well.
Absolutely.
Not only make it about yourself. Yeah.
Absolutely, that's very important.
Yeah. I often say that the journey goes inwards, and the pictures you do are like postcards you send from the journey. And in that context, I like to quote Caspar David Friedrich from painting, who said, if the painter is not able to paint what is inside, he should not paint what is in front of him. So I would say that's also valid for photography. Yeah. But there are certain ways of working with photography that you don't need to know about yourself, that the journey is not necessary. But you can go and travel and have certain subjects and work about them without possibly knowing for yourself why you are interested in it. And I don't know. It's something that I often miss in documentary work when it's presented, is the reason. Why are you attracted to the subject? Yeah. What is your personal background you are doing this documentary work? I think there's not enough information about this often.
I very much agree with this. And this is also the thing that I always say. I can only make work from something that I have personally experienced, that I have experienced on a deeply emotional level. Because if I just read into it because it interests me on a very superficial level, I feel I would treat the subject in a very wrong way. And I think this is also why the work has, I think the work is stronger when it starts.
May I join in with a statement? Do you hear me?
Yes.
I'm sorry that the camera switched off. My internet connection is not very good. I would like to comment on a few of the last sentences you said, that often you feel a lack of information on the person who acts as an, let's say, documentary author in photography. I don't necessarily would share this, because there are some examples that I find extremely touching and inspiring. I don't know if you, both of you, know Jim Goldberg's Raised by Wolves, which to me is one of the best documentary and at the same time artistic work I've ever seen in decades. It is a work on homeless youth, young people in the USA, made in the 90s. And it's, I have no idea of the biography of Jim Goldberg, but the work is absolutely fantastic in its complexity, in the richness of the forms, and in the, let's say, touching deepness of describing the biographies, the struggles, even the defeats, and in a few cases, the disease of some of the protagonists.
But Andreas, I was not against the documentary approach at all. I was just saying it's
not. Oh, thanks, Ute. She just the book from the shelf. I was just saying that sometimes it might be very helpful to know the biography and the person, the man or the woman who does a certain documentary thing, but it's not necessarily the condition under which the work is touching or let's say satisfying or was es überzeugend?
Convincing. I do agree, but we are talking about a different perspective. Yeah. Andreas, you talk about the work that you see as a viewer. I talk about the inside perspective of someone who is producing the work. It's not about the quality of the pictures. It's how much is your journey inward or outward? That's the only thing. It's like if I choose a subject and I go and shoot in refugee camps. And why am I doing this? What is the reason for this? I think these are questions that are very important and that can feed back into the work. It's not about the outcome. It's not how the pictures look. It's a working process.
Of course, I would absolutely agree. One of the examples where there's a match between the biography and the work was War Porn by Christoph Bangert, who reflected about the role of his family, even the photo memories of his grandfather in the war, and what that had to do with himself, and probably might have to do with himself one day when his kids will be asking him, Daddy, what did you do when you were a war photographer back then? So that even makes it better, but it's not necessary.
But I think that's a misunderstanding. We don't think that in every work has to be biographical aspects. Also, you can have also really a pure documentary photography. I always talk about the difference. When Walker Evans was talking about the work, he said it's his most subjective expression, really, to do these photographs. And when I really learned documentary photography in Germany in the 80s, they were telling you, you have to forget your personality. You have to show the neutral way, really the objective way of reality. So that only the theme is important, and you as a person, it's not important. You have to forget the author. And this is two different perspectives. It doesn't mean that in every photographic work has to be biographical aspect. That's not meant. But the understanding of a documentary vision is also that you have a subjective conception of it, and it's out of your really personal perception of the way of the world. Also that's about. Also it's not that that every work has to be personal in this way. And there's in Germany really very much the idea. I fight against this the whole really time, really since the 80s, that it's about the theme. You have to show. My teacher was also say you have to show the reality and not not your personal interpretation. This is very restrictive, really. So, and it's totally the opposite of what we are talking about.
Yeah, because
there's no that Goldberg for sure. It's a fantastic work, but we are not talking against this work.
No, what we talk about is about the psychological and the philosophical approach. And my philosophical approach is that there is no fixed reality that we all agree on. We all have our different perspectives. So if there is no truth, there can also be truthfulness, and that is related to an inward journey. How much can I feel it's right? Where is this leading me to? Doing research, following this inner path is for me the only thing we have. And the outcome of the world can look whatever. It can be any genre, doesn't matter, but it's the approach. Well, what is your opinion, Elena? The sound is muted.
Muted?
Now you're back.
Okay. I think this is what I love so much about art in general, and also photography, be it documentary or not. To come back to the spatial aspect that I described in photography before. And if you compare a photograph with a room that opens to the viewer, the room is always incomplete, and the viewer will furnish it in the background of his own experience and associations. And an image, no matter what it shows or how rational you try to show a specific aspect of reality, with 100 viewers, you will have 100 different perceptions of this one image in the end. Like everybody sees something else or feels something else to some extent, and I find this is what makes it so interesting. There is no right and no wrong, and a photograph is just able to capture a very short fragment of a reality. You don't know what was before, what was after, or what was the exact context in which the image was taken. What was the exact situation? It can be very deceiving as well. So yeah, photography is not really a medium of evidence.
Well, is that it? Any final sentence? Anything to add?
I think this was a good final sentence.
Yeah. Well. Elena, anything else you would like to add?
I think that was a really interesting discussion.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for this.
Well, thanks everybody for coming. Thanks, Elena, for doing this with us. And yeah, I hope that you will also participate in one of the next formats. We're doing this every night till Saturday. So good night for tonight, and hope to see you tomorrow.
Okay.
Thanks for listening, everyone.
Bye, folks.
Bye-bye.